Hey there everyone, my name's Andrew and this is Canadian Starships. Welcome back to update number 2 on the Galaxy class project. This is a 1/1000 scale project and it is going to be a really nice size. Now if you caught the last update, which was the first one, you would have seen the cleanup work happening on all the parts. So the majority of that is complete. Now there is a little bit more refining that's going to happen, and there's going to be a lot of body work that's going to need to happen on this project because that's just the nature with a garage kit. But in this update, what I hope to be able to accomplish is to first work on some refinement on the secondary hull. The upper section of the secondary hull, so it's in two halves, the upper part is a little bit wider spread than the bottom part is. So what I'm gonna have to do in order to make those two parts match properly is to heat the top part, put it into a jig so that it compresses in, and let it cool in that configuration. Then when I pull it from the jig, hopefully it'll retain that narrower stance and it'll mate properly with the lower section of the secondary hull. Then I also want to get the mounting point into the bottom part of the secondary hull so that it can sit on top of the temporary base with the post. Also, I'm going to get a start on the actual armature for the project, getting the support structure up to the neck, and we'll see how far we get with some nuts and bolts construction. But that's kind of my hopeful goal for this project, to reshape the top section of the secondary hull and to get the armature started. So let's get right at it. But before we get started, why not take a moment and click the subscribe button, and while you're here, click on that notification bell so you don't miss a single video. So one of the things that's definitely necessary on these garage kits is a lot of work to clean them up. Now what I'm doing here is filing the edges where the sensor bands are on the secondary hull. There's a lot of overspill on the casting, flash, all kinds of things that just need to be cleaned up. So I've taken this file and I'm just working on getting those cleaned up so that when I mate the two parts, they work really well and I've got a good sensor band to work with. Now there will be a lot of putty that'll need to go into these sensor bands on all sections of the ship once it's assembled, but yeah, there's just a good chunk of work to get these parts refined. So I've decided where I'm going to put the post, and it's going to be right where that center mark is. Now what I've done is I've found the center on the part and made a nice line so that I make sure that the post is as dead center as I can make it. Now if we want to look at the other side here, I was thinking about putting the post here, but I really didn't want to damage this really nice detail here. So where the warp core ejects is where the post is going to be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill the hole for this piece. This piece will either go this way, like this inside, or more likely it will go this way inside. And I'm going to have a elbow joint coming out here and going up the neck, and it may get secured at the top of the neck into the piece and then go out to the saucer, or it might just elbow and go out. I'm not quite sure how much support it's going to actually need there, but so the aperture, the hole here is going to be drilled in. It's going to be stepped up with the drill bits. I'm not going to take the big honkin' drill bit and go right in. I'll start with a very small so that everything remains centered until I get up to the large drill bit that this T-junction will fit into. And then inside this, because this is going to be way too big for the thickness of the resin here, I'm going to have some square brass that this rests on. One, so that the bottom of the T doesn't go too far down through, but also I want the T to be elevated slightly inside because wires are going to come out the end here, the back side for all of the wiring for the back section of the ship. And wires are also going to go hopefully up through the post into the saucer section. So those would be primarily the wires going to the phaser array from the Adreno, and they'll be nicely protected in the brass rod. So wires for the saucer will go up the neck through the posts, and wires for the back end will come out here. Some of them might come out here, be split off, and then go back up to the saucer. I'm not sure. I've got to work out all the wiring for it. But my next step is going to be getting this counter sunk in. Now, you would have seen I was doing some cleanup work, and really had to file down the edges here to make sure that they were nice and clean. Had to deal with some of this area up front here. I've started to mold the bottom section of, well, sorry, this is the bottom section, but I've started to mold the top section so that it conforms to the width of this section a little bit better. That's going to take a little bit of time, and it might take a little bit of work with the heat gun. I'm not sure. I'm just going to have to play that by ear, but I'm going to get this installed so that this can sit on the stand, on the temporary working base. Once this is in, it's all level, and I can connect it to the working base, then I'm going to clean up all of the parts for the pylons, because there's a lot of cleanup work that will need to be done. And I'm going to get the pylons wired up, run wires through the posts in the pylons, and then get them attached to the back end here. And that's going to be the first stage of construction on this thing. So here we have the mounting point secured into the bottom section of the hull. Here is the underside. Now there's a little bit of chipping around the edge that's going to need to be taken care of. It'll be dealt with putty, but it's nice and flush. You won't see much of the mounting point sticking out of the bottom there, which is really nice. So the copper T has been very well epoxied in. Now the epoxy here does not need to hold the weight of the ship. That's going to be done on the saucer section. This is simply here to hold it into place. It will, the stand will support the mounting point, and the saucer section will bear the weight of the ship. That's the big oval ring that I've previously shown you. So this is all ready to sit on top of the post. Sits in very nicely, and I've made sure that it's all level, so once it's attached to the presentation base, it will be completely level. It'll look beautiful. I've got two square brass rods working as brackets, not for necessarily strength, although it does add strength and security to the whole armature system. That's been there to keep this raised up in the proper location while it was being epoxied in place, and just to create a bit of a reference point so that it does go nice and flush there on the bottom. So this is going to be ready to do additional work on the armature. Now I'm going to use the next steps in building the armature. I'm going to use a brass coupler, which will go in here, and that'll be well secured in place, and then a elbow will go on like this. I'm going to shorten this elbow down by about half on the joining point. It's a little bit too close for comfort to the deflector dish. Now, it all does fit the way it is here, but if I trim about half of that off, so say about 4 to 5 millimeters off of the copper T here, then that'll just give me that much extra clearance on the deflector dish. So this 90-degree angle copper T, copper elbow goes here. The next brass section goes up, and then there's going to be a 45-degree angle elbow that will go in on that. So straight post, 45, and it'll go up with a section and meet up with the oval ring in the saucer section. So that's how the armature is coming along. Obviously in the back here you've got an open section where wire will come through. So all of the wiring for the back end of the ship, so the warp nacelles, all the different nav lights, the interior lighting for the secondary hull, all of that wiring is going to be coming out at this point. Some of the wiring I'm hoping will go up through this area here for the saucer section. We'll have to see how that goes, but that's why I've got the copper T situated this way. So some of the wires can come out here and others can potentially go up the post. So we'll see what happens there. My next step is to actually do some construction work. I'm going to work on refining the pylons and getting those ready to attach. I'm going to attach to the bottom section because it's a lot easier to keep that level than it is if you were trying to attach it to the top section and add the bottom piece. So the pylons will get attached to the back here onto this piece, and then once all the wiring's in place, I'm happy and ready to seal that bottom section up, then the top part will go on. And this whole ship is going to basically be built from the bottom up. Since we're talking about starting construction of the project, we also need to talk about the electronics, and I want to take a moment to touch on the power supply. Now, normally this is the type of power supply I would use. It is a 9-volt, 2-amp power supply, and it runs really well for a model kit that's going to somewhere in North America that uses this system. However, this is a no-go for this particular project because this project is going to Belgium, and you may or may not be aware they don't use the same power supply, and their outlets don't look the same as our outlets do, and that's quite common going different places in the world. So my normal setup would be this power supply going into this small jack connected to this small switch, and the jack and the switch I'm going to be able to use. However, this plug, while it would work here for my testing and working on the project, it will not work in Belgium. So let's just toss this aside and let's pull this baby out. Now you might think, okay, Andrew, how does this actually plug into the wall? It doesn't look like the prongs are long enough to actually fit into a wall socket. Well, that is correct. And also, this has the exact same plug here that'll go into the model. So this will be here. It'll be attached to the switch, and it'll go to the various different areas that it needs to inside the bit display base. However, what's unique about this is that it comes with interchangeable plug adapters. And so this is the one for North America, and it would just slide in here, and if I clicked it down, it would just lock into place, and you could use it as you would the other adapter. But this is for North America, and let's see. I've been told that this one works in New Zealand. Pretty sure this works in South Africa because I've been there, and that looks like the outlets that they have. And then the one that I need for Belgium is this little guy here. And so what this is going to allow me to do is put on whichever plug needs to go on for wherever in the world this model needs to go. In this particular case, it's Belgium. So I could work with this one in the shop, and then when it gets to the client, they can just pop in this one and go. Now you might be saying, okay, Andrew, the voltages in North America and Europe are completely different. And yes, you are correct. So we're 120 here. I believe they're 230 or 240 there. I'd have to double check. But this is rated 100 to 240. And so it will automatically adjust that as needed depending on what is coming into the unit. And it will put out the 9 volts, 2 amps to this plug. So this is going to be a very elegant solution to the power supply problem. And it wasn't very expensive. You can find these on Amazon. So if you're building a project and you might be taking it to a different country that runs on a different power supply, then this is something that's going to be really good for you. I got this idea actually from a new camera that I have purchased for work. It's the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 6K Pro, and this is exactly the system that they use. They provide one power supply for whatever countries they're shipping to, and they have all of these adapters that just clip right in. And I thought that's actually a really good idea. I wonder if I can find a power supply for the project that would do the exact same thing, and well, it was fairly easy to find. Next up, I want to show you the work that I've done on the nacelle pylons. First thing you'll notice is that I fished 4 wires through each of the conduits running through the pylons, and that was a trick. 4 30 gauge wires is the most that I am fitting through, and I will have to make use of those as best I can. whether it's using a common ground or making use of the brass post inside to act as an extra wire. We'll have to see what we do in order to get the number of circuits to the warp nacelles that we need. Secondly, you may notice that the starboard pylon is much cleaner in this area than the port pylon is. And that's because I've done a ton of refinement work on these parts. Any garage kit that is cast in a mold will have areas that you need to clean up and parts that you need to remove. This one has a significant number of poor points. You can see here and where the post goes in. There's a lot of material that has to be removed. There's also significant mold seam line here. You can tell by looking at the part that it is a cut mold. So this would have been molded in silicone, and it would have been done as one piece. And then once the master was molded, they would have cut along here and along this point on the back. Now, this is not primer I put on. This is a kit that I purchased from somebody that already owned it. So there's a little bit of paint on here. It's the only part on the whole kit that has anything done with it. And just seems a little bit odd how it was done. But you can really see that seam line. So that's because it was done as a cut mold. You can tell that it's much less pronounced on this piece here. If you look very carefully, especially in this panel area, you can still see it. Sometimes when you cast a part, and if the mold is not closed properly, you'll get a slightly lower section and a slightly higher section from the two parts of the mold not lining up properly. So that's happened on this part, and it's very pronounced right here. So you either need to sand it down or add putty to bridge that gap. Somehow you need to bridge that gap, whether it's by removing product or adding product to it. So I have sanded this down as best as I can, and I am likely going to have to putty this section to smooth that out, just like you would smooth out a patch job that you do on your walls, on your drywall. So this pylon is almost completely cleaned up. There's going to be some work I need to do probably up in this area. I'm going to need to get the Dremel out to do that so that the nacelle sits perfectly on there. But if you're doing a garage kit, something that somebody has made with molds and etc., that's not a injection molded styrene kit, you're going to run into some of these areas. I've got to say, this kit has been very well cast overall. These are just the problem parts on this kit, and you're going to run into that. That's you have to expect that from a non-commercially produced kit. It's just something that you're going to have to expect when you do it. And so you take your time, you do the work, you do it meticulously, carefully. You do not rush it through, and you'll come out with some really good results. And so that's going to be all the time I have for this update. I have actually accomplished, I think, everything I set out to do in this update. I have gotten the armature started. The bottom section of the secondary hull will sit nicely on the stand now. I've got a lot of things sussed out for how I'm going to do things. The power supply has been figured out, and I have started to refine those nacelles so that they can be attached to the secondary hull, which is going to happen in the next update. Actually, I'm hoping that that's going to happen in the next couple days if I can get that other pylon cleaned up so that it'll mate well with that secondary hull. And that'll be the start, the major start of construction, which is going to be absolutely fantastic to get that underway. uh, we are just entering stage 2 of opening here in Ontario, which means hopefully this mop on my head is going to be gone by the next update, because as of tomorrow at time of recording, our hairstylists are going to be reopened. So I'm hoping to get this all out. It's been like ridiculously hot here the last couple days, and I don't do well in the heat, and true Canadian that way, right? I prefer the colder weather, so getting all this off my head's gonna be so good. So hopefully next time you see me, this ridiculous mess on my head that I've just stopped bothering trying to do anything with will be gone, and I'm looking forward to that. I've got some holiday time coming up too, which means I'm gonna have some time to dedicate to this project, which it's gonna be pretty awesome as well. So I hope you've enjoyed this update. If you did, make sure that you hit that like button. If you're new to my channel or you haven't done so yet, why not hit that subscribe button today? You'll make me very happy if you do. Remember, we are on the journey to 1,000 subscribers for the 1/1000 scale Galaxy class project. So if you haven't subscribed yet, why not do that? And you will get me one step closer to that 1,000 subscriber count for this amazing project. But for now, my name is Andrew, and this is Canadian Starships. Have a great day and a great Canada Day, everyone.